Answer is B for number 10. For number 11, it says, look at the data presented in the data plot below and which comparison is true. Okay, so we can go ahead and figure out the mean of each data set. So mean just means that you add up all of these numbers and then divide by the total. Okay, so for data set 1, the mean, that's going to give me 61.5. For data set 2, the mean is going to give me 80. Okay, and then a second part that we could do for greater variation, we see that this in the answer choices, that's what we're comparing. For variation, that just means we take the largest minus the lowest. So in this case, 95 is the greatest and 55 is the smallest. So that's going to give us 40. For data set 2, we have 95 minus 65, and that's going to give us 30. Okay, so we see that data set 2 has a higher mean, or greater mean, and then actually data set 1 has a greater variation. So that's just what we have to look for. So A says data set 1 has a greater mean. That's not true. B, data set 1 has a greater mean. That's also not true. So now we can look at C and D. So C and D both say data set 2 has the greater mean. C says data set 1 has the greater variation, okay, which is true. So that would be C, and we could see why it's not D because it says data set 2 has the greater variation. Okay, number 12, it says, what is the median of the data set used to create the box plot below? Remember, the median is just that middle number. So the median is 8. That's a super simple one. Okay. 13, which value in the data set below is an outlier? Remember, an outlier is kind of a number or point that doesn't really belong with the other data points. So if I take a look at this, 104 seems to be the farthest away from all of those numbers. Okay, so for 13, 104 is my outlier. For 14, it says, which equation could be used to estimate the data in the scatter plot below? Okay, so we know that this is an exponential graph because it has that curve to it. So we know that this is exponential. Okay, so right away, I know that I can cross off A and D because those are linear equations. And I know from going from left to right, this graph is increasing. And so when the graph is increasing, remember, okay, that number before that exponent is a whole number, not a fraction, so it has to be B. For 15, it says, Ms. Ward records the field trip preferences of students separated by age in the table below. What is the joint frequency of 14-year-olds who prefer the nature center? Remember, joint frequency is just when you match up the row to the column. Okay, so it's telling me, hey, 14-year-olds who prefer the nature center. So if I match up the row to the column, that gives me 11. Number 16, Dylan records whether people prefer to drink orange juice, smoothie, coffee, or tea in the morning. And then he separates the responses by which the 3 eastern United States regions they live in, the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, or the South. So then it asks us, hey, what is the conditional frequency now from people who, oh my gosh, I can't read, of people from the South, okay, who prefer tea relative to the total number of respondents, okay? So we need to go ahead and first find out, okay, the South who prefer tea. Well, that number is going to give me 8. So that number is 8. But then it says total to or relative to the total number of respondents, which means that I have to add up every single one of these respondents, and that total is 153. So then we go ahead and take what we're looking for, which is 8, right? The people from the South who like tea, so that's 8. And then we go ahead and divide it by the total. And that's going to give me 0.05, which is my final answer. That's conditional frequency. Okay, number 17, it says which equation could be used to approximate the data in the scatter plot below. So one thing to notice about this one is this seems to have a linear shape. And this is decreasing, okay, which means that we need to have a negative slope. So right away, I can cross off A and B because those are exponential. Then I look at C and D at the slope. Well, since it's decreasing, the slope has to be negative. Malia created a residual plot to analyze a linear function fitted to the data. Okay, the plot is below. What does the plot tell her about her line fitted to the data? Okay, so this is kind of where it gets a little tricky because we want to find the line fitted to the data. When you think of fitted, you think, okay, maybe close together in a line, but in this case, we want them to kind of be scattered. That's what makes it a good fit. Okay, and in order for it to be a good fit with a residual plot, okay, it has to be linear. So I know that it's not going to be B because it says exponential, and I know it's not going to be D because it says quadratic. So now we're dealing with A and B. Okay, again, since this is scattered, or I guess you could say random, right? So this is random, which means it's a good fit. Okay, if they were closer together, or you could maybe say a pattern, right? That would not be a good fit. So since these are random, this would be a good fit, which is A. Okay, 19, it says the data set has a correlation coefficient of 0.944. What is true about this data set? Okay, so this data set has a strong positive linear correlation. 1, it's strong because it's above 0.5. 2, it's positive because the number is positive. So we would say this data has a strong positive linear correlation. So strong positive. Let's just say there was an example of negative 424. Okay, this would be a weak negative. It's weak because it's below 0.5, and it's negative for the obvious reason of the number being negative, okay? For 20, Anaya is studying a textbook. Each day she works through a few pages of the book, and she tracks how long it's taking her to work through the textbook. And then she finds the equation y equals 12x plus 3 to approximate the total pages studied after any number of days. So which statement is true based on the equation? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look at that slope, which is 12. And so we want to look at that because the total number of pages studied after any number of days. Okay, and that is the rate, so this talks about the rate which identifies the slope. Okay, so that's why we're going to look at 12. So we would look at these answers. Anaya studied approximately 3 pages per day. No. Anaya studied approximately 4 pages a day. Nope. 9 pages a day. No. 12 pages a day, each day. Yes. Okay. 21 says Jordan has a loan at a bank and makes monthly payments. He pays different amounts each month but he can approximate the total amount he owes the bank using the equation y equals negative 160x plus 1,650, where y is the total number owed and x is the number of months in loan repayment. Which statement is true? Okay, so this is telling me that this 1,650, that is that initial amount. So our y-intercept here represents that initial. Oh, I just spelled initial wrong. Hang on. That represents the initial amount, okay? So we started with a total loan of 1,650. Boom. Right off the bat, got it. Okay, 22, which statement describes a casual relationship? So right here, we're talking about casual. Okay, this one might be a little tricky, but if we go through, when event X increases, Y decreases. No. Event X and event Y have the same linear correlation. Nope. C, when event X increases, Y increases. D, event X is responsible for a change in event Y. Yes. So X is responsible for the change in Y. Okay, that's what makes it casual. For 23, what is a line with two endpoints? That would be a line segment. A line with two endpoints. Number 24, an isometry starting over. An isometry is a transformation in which the preimage and image are congruent. Okay, isometry, think about it. Isometric, they're identical. Okay, similar just means that they're congruent. Okay, for number 25, if fxy equals 3x, 5y, then what is f of 6, negative 5? All this is telling me, hey, I got to plug in 6 for x and negative 5 for y. Not too bad. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take f 6, negative 5 equals 3 times 6 and 5 times negative 5. And then get 18, negative 25. Number 26, if fxy equals negative x, negative y, and gxy equals x plus 2, negative y, then what is f of g of 8, 3? So we got to work with the inside of the parentheses first, so we work inside first. So we're going to start with the inside, which gives me 8, negative 3 to plug in for the point G. Okay, so G of 8, 3 equals, then we take what that G of xy equaled, and so that's x plus 2. So we're going to take 8 as x and 3 as y. So that's going to look like 8 plus 2, negative 3. So that point is going to turn into 10, negative 3. Okay, then we work outside. So then that's going to be f. So we take f and we use the point that we just found, 10, negative 3 equals, okay, negative, we're going to plug in 10 for x, and then we're going to plug in negative 3 for y. So that's going to give me a negative 10, positive 3, because a negative times a negative is a positive. So that point would give me negative 10, 3, which is my final answer. Okay, last but not least, what coordinates will a point x, y reflect over the line y equals x have? So y equals x, okay, is we want to reflect over that line, y equals x. That point would give me y comma x. And that would be my final answer, okay? All right, you guys, take a look at this. If you have questions on any problem, rewatch the video, right? And if it still doesn't make sense, then go ahead and ask me in class tomorrow, or you can go ahead and email me, okay?